The rain always seemed to fall harder in November, or maybe that was just how Mary remembered things. She stood by her apartment window in downtown Chicago, staring at the blurry streets below. Cars passed through the puddles like quiet reminders of movement, of life continuing with or without her permission. Inside her hand she held an old notebook, its blue cover worn and soft at the edges. A name was written on it in small black letters. Joe Carter. Mary pressed the book to her chest. She could still smell him on its pages sometimes, coffee, ink, and the faint warmth of his hands. It wasn't her notebook, it wasn't her story, but it had always felt like her soul lived inside its pages. Mary was 25 when she met Joe. She had already learned too much about disappointment and not enough about hope. She worked as a barista in a crowded coffee shop 2 blocks from the train station. She liked the smell of roasted beans and the quiet hum of morning voices, even though she rarely spoke to anyone beyond what her job required. Joe, on the other hand, walked into her life with a kind of brightness that felt almost foreign. He entered holding a camera and a backpack full of folders. His eyes were warm brown, soft like autumn earth. He smiled as if smiling was the first language he knew. "Hi," he said, tapping the counter lightly. "Can I get a black coffee? And maybe a little patience. I'm trying to figure out my morning." Mary blinked at him. People rarely said strange things to her with such simple honesty. "You want patience?" she asked. He laughed. "Yes, if you sell that here." She shook her head despite herself. "We're out of stock." "Well," he said, stepping aside to wait for his drink, "maybe I'll check again tomorrow." Mary didn't expect him to return the next day, but he did, and the day after that, and many days after. It turned into a routine. He came with his messy hair, tired eyes, and hopeful grin, and she gave him his coffee with extra sugar, for courage, he always joked. He told her he was a freelance photographer, trying to finish a project he had dreamed of since college. He never fully explained what the project was. Instead, he showed her bits and pieces: people on the bus, shadows on the street, a child laughing with a balloon, a lonely dog by a storefront. "They're small moments," he told her, "but small moments are where real stories live." Mary didn't understand that then, but she came to understand it painfully well later. Their friendship turned into something soft, something fragile, something she didn't name because naming it felt risky. They spent evenings walking by the river, where Joe would balance on the railings while Mary pretended to be annoyed. "You're going to fall," she would say. "I probably will," he answered. "But if you catch me, I'll be fine." He said such things lightly, but Mary felt their weight anyway. One evening, he handed her a small blue notebook, the same one she now held years later in her apartment. "I want you to write something," he said. "Anything. Your thoughts, your fears, the things you don't say." "Why?" "Because," Joe answered, "sometimes writing saves people, and sometimes it helps others understand them." She wrote her first entry that night. "Joe makes me feel like life is not as heavy as I think it is." She didn't let him read it, of course. Not then. But Joe kept writing in the notebook too: stories, reflections, fragments of thoughts, dreams he had, fears he never told anyone. They passed the notebook back and forth like an unspoken promise. It became a quiet home for both their hearts. Months passed. The seasons changed. Their closeness deepened until even silence between them felt warm. But life, as it often does, began testing them. Joe got an offer to work as a photographer for a news agency that traveled across the country. It was not a full-time job, not yet, but it was the opportunity he had dreamed of for years. "It's 6 months," he told her, sitting with her on the river steps. The water reflected a weak winter sun. "6 months and then I'll be back. Then maybe I'll finally build the life I want." Mary nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm happy for you." But her chest tightened painfully. Joe held her hands. "Mary, listen, I don't want this to change us." She swallowed hard. "Things change whether we want them to or not." He looked down at their intertwined fingers. "Can you wait for me?" She hesitated. She had been left before, by family, by friends, by people who promised to stay and didn't. Waiting felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with no guarantee anyone would pull her back. But Joe was different. "I can try," she whispered. He pulled her into an embrace. She felt his heartbeat against her cheek, steady, warm, grounding. "Then I'll come back," he breathed. I will always come back. Joe left in January. The cold felt sharper without him. He called when he could. They talked about little things. His stories made her laugh. Her silence often made him worry. On lonely nights, Mary opened the notebook and read his older entries. They carried her through the emptiness. Then one day, a different entry appeared, one she found after Joe visited for a weekend in April before leaving again for another assignment. If anything ever happens to me, I hope this notebook reaches her. I hope she knows she was the one who made everything mean something. Joe. Mary read it 3 times, her hands shaking. She didn't understand why he wrote that. She didn't want to understand. She confronted him when he returned briefly in early May. Why did you write that? She demanded, the notebook in her hand. Joe looked at the pages, then at her, sadness softening his expression. I'm exposed to a lot out there, he said quietly. Accidents, violence, unstable places. I wanted you to know how important you are. Just in case. Mary felt tears forming. You shouldn't say such things. I know, but I needed to. And then he held her tightly. So tightly she felt as if letting go would break her bones. They kissed for the first time that night. It wasn't passionate or rushed. It was slow, trembling, full of unspoken fears and deep, heavy love. Afterward, they lay together in the dim light of her room, their fingers intertwined like threads sewing 2 broken pieces into something whole. Joe was supposed to come back in June. June passed. No call, no message, nothing. Mary tried not to panic. She told herself he was busy, traveling, moving from one assignment to another. But deep inside, fear started eating through her like fire through paper. Then one morning in July, her phone rang. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman from the news agency. Her voice was careful, slow, gentle, too gentle. Miss Mary, something happened to Joe. Mary felt her world split open. He had been in a car accident while traveling between assignments. His injuries were severe. He was alive, but unconscious. He asked us to call you if anything ever happened, the woman added softly. Mary didn't remember packing her bag. She didn't remember the train ride. She didn't remember entering the hospital. All she remembered was seeing him through the glass window, his body fragile under white sheets, his face pale, his left arm wrapped in bandages. He didn't wake up that day. He didn't wake up the next. She stayed by his side, reading from their notebook, hoping he could hear her. Hoping her voice could call him back. I'm here, Joe, she whispered again and again. I'm right here. Please come back. Joe remained unconscious for 2 weeks. Then one morning, his fingers moved. Mary gasped and held his hand tighter. Joe, can you hear me? His eyelids fluttered before finally opening. His eyes were full of pain, lost in confusion. But when he saw her, something gentle flickered inside them. Mary, he whispered, voice rough. You came. She could barely breathe through her tears. Of course I came. His recovery was slow. Sometimes he remembered things, sometimes he didn't. His body healed faster than his spirit, and the doctor warned them that trauma might affect his memory, his emotions, even his personality. He had nightmares often. He woke up shaking. He avoided looking at mirrors for weeks. Mary stayed with him through everything. She read the notebook to him. She reminded him of their walks by the river. She held him during moments of fear, whispering that he wasn't alone. Some days he smiled. Some days he didn't speak at all. But she stayed. Because love, she realized, wasn't just soft moments. It was sacrifice. It was holding someone's broken pieces even when your own hands were bleeding. Joe eventually returned home, but he wasn't the same man who once walked into her cafe asking for patience. He was quieter, more distant. His memories returned in fragments, like shards of a once whole mirror. He forgot their first walk by the river. He forgot why he loved photography. He forgot small things, important things. But he never forgot her. Still, Mary could see how much pain he carried, guilt for burdening her, frustration for not remembering, fear that he would never be whole again. One evening, he closed the notebook and said softly, I don't know if I can be the man I was. Mary reached for his hand. You don't need to be the man you were. I just want you here. He looked at her with tired eyes. But what if, here, is not enough anymore? She shook her head fiercely. It's enough for me. It always will be. They held each other then, an embrace heavy with pain, love, and everything they could not fix. Life tested him again. Joe tried returning to photography, but his hands trembled when he held the camera. The noise of the streets triggered his fear. The fast pace overwhelmed him. He grew restless, angry, sad. Mary watched helplessly as he drifted into himself, farther and farther. One night, he broke down. "I'm ruining your life," he cried, collapsing onto the couch. "I'm ruining everything." Mary knelt beside him. "Joe, you're not." "I am," he shouted, tears falling. "You deserve someone who isn't broken. Someone who doesn't wake up screaming. Someone who can remember the things you remember." "Stop," she whispered, grabbing his face gently. "I don't want someone else. I want you. Even if you're hurting, even if you're lost, we'll find our way back." He leaned into her touch, trembling. "What if we don't? Then we walk in the dark together," she said. "I'm not leaving." She embraced him tightly. The power of that embrace held him together that night. It held her together too. Months later, something changed. Joe began remembering things. A laugh, a moment, a place. Small details resurfaced like tiny lights in a long corridor. The doctor said memories sometimes returned this way, unexpectedly. But with memory came pain. Joe remembered the accident, the fear, the metal, the blood, the silence afterward. He woke up screaming more often. Mary held him, whispering gently until the shaking stopped. But his returning memories also brought one more thing, guilt. He told her one morning, "I think you should leave." She stared at him, speechless. "What? You've given up everything for me," he whispered. "Your time, your peace, your life." "That was my choice," she said firmly. "It shouldn't have to be," he replied. "I can't ask you to stay in this." "But I want to stay," she said with a breaking voice. He didn't answer. He just looked at her with a sadness that felt like goodbye. In late autumn, Mary went to visit her parents for a weekend. It was Joe's suggestion. He told her he needed time to think clearly, something he hadn't managed for months. When she returned, she found the apartment quiet, empty. Joe's clothes were gone. The notebook sat on the dining table with a single page written inside. "Mary, I love you more than anything in this world. And because I love you, I have to let you go. You deserve a life full of light, not one tied to my shadows. Thank you for saving me when I couldn't save myself. Joe." Mary dropped to her knees. The tears fell uncontrollably. She whispered his name like a prayer, like a plea, like a final surrender. But he didn't return. Joe disappeared from her life for 2 years. Mary tried to move on, but some loves leave a permanent mark, a wound that never fully closes. She kept the notebook. She read it whenever the world felt too heavy. She worked at a library. She lived quietly. She breathed, even when it hurt. But she never stopped wondering where he was, how he was, if he was okay. She never stopped loving him. It was a snowy evening in February when a soft knock echoed at her door. Mary opened it slowly. Joe stood there, older, more tired, but whole in a way she hadn't seen in years. "Hi," he whispered. Her breath caught. "Joe." He held a different notebook in his hand, brown leather, new pages, a fresh start. "I've spent 2 years trying to fix myself," he said quietly. "Therapy, recovery, facing things I didn't want to face. And I'm not perfect. I'm still healing, but I'm better." Mary stared at him as tears filled her eyes. "I didn't come to ask you for anything," he added. "I just came to return this." He placed the new notebook in her hands. "I thought, if you ever wanted to write something again, maybe it could be in here." Mary opened the notebook. The first page read, "If love finds its way back, I hope it finds us gentler this time." Her tears fell silently. "Why now?" she asked, voice trembling. "Because," Joe said, stepping closer, "I never stopped loving you. Not for one day, but I didn't want to come back until I could hold you without breaking. Until I could embrace you with strength, not weakness." Mary touched his face softly. "Joe, you didn't have to be perfect." He shook his head. "No, but I had to try." Their foreheads touched, and in that fragile closeness, something long lost was found again. Mary whispered, "Stay." Joe closed his eyes. His voice cracked. "I will, if you'll have me." She nodded through her tears. "I always will." And she pulled him into an embrace that held years of love, sacrifice, pain, and the quiet power of two souls trying again. They didn't run into each other's arms like in movies. They didn't kiss under the falling snow. They didn't promise forever, but they stood there, two people weathered by time, touched by pain, bound by a love that refused to disappear. Joe whispered, "I don't know where this goes." Mary answered, "We don't have to know. We just have to begin." And they began, slowly, carefully, honestly. Their love didn't return to what it once was. It became something deeper, something shaped by loss and strengthened by choice. They wrote in the new notebook together. Not every day, not every moment, just enough to build a story they could live with. A story that wasn't perfect, but real. A story that hurt, but healed. A story that ended not with certainty, but with hope. Because sometimes, the most astonishing ending is the one where the world doesn't magically fix itself, but two broken hearts decide to try again anyway.